Moving on from question 5 to question 6, the final question for this first passage from Reading Comprehension drill set number 3 over at lawhub.lsac.org. As always, we've already highlighted our main idea sentences and hopefully internalized them by this point in the passage evaluation. We've got a highlight tool ready, and we're going to read the question stem and identify and mark exactly what it is we're supposed to do for number 6. So number 6 reads, the contrast between interior designer and architect in the third paragraph is presented as analogous to the contrast blank. So I'm going to highlight contrast between interior designer and architect is analogous to one of these things in the answer choices. Now, when they give a specific term or location reference, I'm going to go straight to that term or location reference, and we're going to try to predict what the answer should be based on finding the relevant contrast that was referred to. So we see the phrase interior designer and architect. I'm inclined to look for those terms rather than use this find tool over here. The find tool is just a little bit clumsy, and I'm of the opinion that scanning is probably a little bit more easy, and we see interior designer right here, hopefully. So we're going to have to read a sentence above and a sentence below to make sure that we understand why that contrast of the interior designer and the architect is provided within the context of the sentence or the paragraph, and have that prediction in mind as we go through the answer choices. So we read, this ambivalence was expressed in Wharton's aesthetic vision as well. In her architectural writings, her sympathies lay more with the interior designer, who has to work within given constraints to make a house livable, than with the architect, who's given a much freer hand and, in her opinion, too often produces unlivable spaces in the name of artistic autonomy. This preference is in keeping with her vehement rejection of those artists and movements that, on the surface at least, most represent a change and that called for, among other things, the abandonment of the closed forms of mainstream genres. So, this contrast between the interior designer and the architect, we can actually highlight in a different color since this is the last question of the passage. We know that it's basically included so that we can see that the architect has too much autonomy. That's the key. Whereas the interior designer is somebody who is working within the closed forms of the mainstream genres. And I feel a little bit better about kind of tearing up my prior highlights, knowing that there's no additional question at this point that's going to come after this passage. And on the exam, remember that there is going to be a little vertical line. It's not here in this specific drill set, but on the actual exam, there's a little vertical line that will tell you when you're done with a passage. So you will know when the passage is going to be finished from a question perspective. So I'm going to go back to my pink, and we're going to try to find an answer choice that matches this idea that the interior designer is who Wharton is said to associate with, while the architect is somebody who has too much artistic autonomy, and Wharton prefers that closed form of the interior designer. So, choice A, between artistic and social values in literature. Well, we don't actually discuss artistic and social values. It's about this artistic autonomy idea. So, A can be eliminated as just not the contrast that is being focused upon. Then, choice B, between artists working within traditional genres and more experimental artists. Well, ding, 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 that is exactly what we just identified. And you want to be a little assertive and say this is our correct answer if you've got a prediction that broadly matches it. Then, choice C, between the short story and other more open literary forms. Well, the issue isn't about the literary forms, and you have to be careful because obviously they're using the phrase short story, hoping that you're going to grab this trap that doesn't match our prediction, but does reuse language from the paragraph. So be careful, but we see why C is eliminated. Then choice D, between the constraint that Wharton felt in her life and the freedom she experienced in her fiction. Well, no, it's not about Wharton's life versus her fictional freedom. So again, that just doesn't match what we expected and what the passage states. Lastly, choice E, between feminists seeking financial self-sufficiency and those advocating more radical social change. Well, we're not discussing a difference in feminists. So that's, again, not the contrast that's being used. And we see how Choice B matches what we proactively read. And if you enjoyed the tips in this video, please consider liking it or subscribing to the channel so that you'll be notified when additional explanation videos such as this are released by my guru. You can also check out the description below for links to access full video explanations for full prep tests available here at lawhub.lsac.org. And you can check out our other playlists, including this one, for the other videos pertaining to drill set 3, as well as other drill sets here at LawHub, whether it's reading comprehension or logical reasoning.